G'day guys, it's Peachy. I want to talk to you today about a deadly little dry fly technique that I think gets overlooked by far too many anglers. It's not a difficult technique, anyone can do this, but there are a few things that you need to get right in order for it to work properly. Let's get into it. So we all love making a beautiful long dry fly cast in a slow still pool like this one behind me here, and having a nice trout come up and sip the fly off the surface, right? Who doesn't love that? But the fact is, there's a lot of different water types in a river, and trout will certainly not always be in slow still pools like this. A lot of times they're going to be in different water types that might be faster water types, riffles, pocket water, tailouts. And we need to be adaptable in the way that we present our flies to those fish. If we can't make the cast to get the presentation right to those fish, then we're not really in the game. So this technique that I want to show you is all about effectively fishing those more difficult spots on the river. The spots where it's hard to get a good drift for your dry fly. And at the end of the day, it's the drift that the fish are looking at. They're not looking at your cast unless you've made a mistake and put a line over the top of them. What the fish see is the drift of your fly, and this technique is all about getting that drift as good as it can be. Now I've just got a standard 9'4" weight here. You can use any dry fly rod for this, you don't need any special equipment. Slightly longer rods will work better with this technique because they'll give you a little bit more range. What is absolutely critical for this technique though is your leader. You must have a long, fine leader that's tapered to a fine point. And the reason for that is that we're going to be casting only the leader using this technique. And if you've only got a short leader, if you've got a 9-foot leader, well, you just can't get far enough away from the fish to do this properly. I'm fishing an 18-foot leader here. It starts with a 14-foot 5X leader that goes down to a tippet ring, and then I've added some tippet onto the end of that. So my total leader length is perhaps 18 to 20 feet. What is critical with your leader in this situation is that it tapers all the way down from the thick butt section at the fly line down to the fine point at the fly. If you have any long level sections in this, or you have big jumps between diameters, then this is not going to work well. Now the casting motion for this I think is something perhaps that people struggle with a little bit, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's not a difficult cast to make as long as you remember some basic things. The big mistake that people make is they swing around and they try to drop the rod tip and flap the whole rod around like that to try to cast the leader. But in fact what's needed is a very, very short and precise casting stroke. I like to cast with my finger on top of the rod like this, and it's just making the rod tip flip and stopping really high like that. You're trying to flip a loop in the leader off the rod tip. And what you'll find is that leader, because of the taper, unrolls exactly in the same way that a fly line does. It's no different to a conventional fly cast, except that you have a very, very short casting arc. I'm not rotating the rod all the way and dropping the rod tip. I'm stopping the rod tip nice and high with a little flick like that. And that forms a loop in the leader that casts the fly beautifully. The other thing that it does is that it holds the butt section of my leader up off the water, which is the whole point of this technique. The whole point of this technique is to keep as much line and leader off the water as I can, so that my dry fly drifts naturally and is not affected by drag. You see, when you're in complex currents, the more line you have on the water, the more currents are acting on your fly and the more drag you're getting. So stopping the rod tip high allows me to keep that line off the water. And in fact, what I'll do sometimes after I make this cast is even stop and then reach out and forwards to even hold the rod tip higher and suspend that line up off the water. So you might see me doing that a little bit. I'll make a forward cast, stop high, and then reach out and up with the rod tip. In terms of flies, most dry flies will work for this. I would say smaller flies are going to be easier to cast. Your big hoppers, big wind-resistant flies and things like that are not going to work very well with this technique. So I tend to use smaller CDC style flies, either CDC sedge caddis patterns or CDC split wing mayflies, or even little CDC F flies depending on the water type. These flies tend to compress quite well when you cast them, and they're a little more aerodynamic, so they're easier to cast with just the weight of the leader alone. Now the great thing about this technique is that it's very precise. You can walk through pocket water, tailouts of pools, faster water runs, place your dry fly very precisely and just fish that water quite quickly and efficiently. If you're trying to cast a bit more distance and you've got fly line in the air, it might take you a few more casts to hit those little pockets accurately. But you can be quite accurate with this technique, provided you've got your casting stroke right and you've got your leader right. So you will need to be a little bit stealthy in your approach with this. Obviously you're trying to get fairly close to the fish with these casts. Having said that, with this long leader and this 9-foot rod, I can fish 20 to 25 feet away from me with only the leader out of the rod tip, no fly line out the rod tip at all. You see, the minute you get fly line out the rod tip, that mass then creates sag that starts dragging your fly along. So it's actually better to have the fly line just inside the rod tip and just cast the leader, because that allows you to suspend more of the line up off the water and control that drift better. Make sure that your leader is greased and that it's floating properly, and that you've got a bit of floatant or something on your fly and your fly is dry, and you'll be able to flick this through all sorts of pocket water without sinking your leader, without your dry fly drowning all the time. So get out there and stalk those tailouts and pocket water like a heron, just flicking little dry flies around, covering water quickly, breaking it down efficiently and effectively. Now in the next video, I'm going to talk about a rigging technique that I use to change to suit the water types that are in front of me on a river like this. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks guys, see you next time.